This is not optimal. Although it is an improvement over the previous position I set everything up in, it is a difficult task finding a corner in this tiny apartment to serve as a studio. Okay, so over the last few videos, we've added a few new playable races to the list of small folk. So how do we work them into our world building? How do they get where they are? And how do you integrate into the setting that we've been working on? In this case, how do Sorial Flyers, Vril, and Lykenin integrate into Texta, our Goblin and Kobold dominated Hermit Kingdom? We can start with the Flyers. How did they get there? Let's say, when they were flying over the land, a flock of several dozen, it was a lot warmer. But their society had noticed the weather was cooling over the last few years. So they were scouting far and wide for new lands to move to, somewhere hopefully warmer. Night began to fall as they continued, and the temperature started to drop. So they landed on a broad, flat ring plateau, the top of a strange, lone mountain. On the rocky crags, they found a cave and huddled in, packed tight for warmth. Intending to wait out the night and planning to continue in the morning when the sun warmed them enough to wake them and start flying again. They didn't know it at the time, but the cold stayed, keeping them in their cold sleep for a long hibernation. Nobody really knows how long, how many tens of centuries before kobolds from the Femus Warren, riding their bats above the mountain, saw something poking through the ice. They decided to investigate the cave entrance on the south side of the ring. And within, they found what they took to be frozen mummies. Dozens of winged reptilian forms with colorful head crests, curled up together as if sleeping, still wearing and carrying their ancient clothes and tools. With help from the goblins stationed at Suck Tower, and at the behest of the Great Gwen and the Imperatrix, the bodies and their belongings were recovered and carried down to Toner Brock, where they could be studied better and hopefully understood. Imagine the surprise of the sages when the first of those frozen forms had warmed enough to draw in a breath and open its eyes. Now that we know how they got there, what do we do with them? They would be the first egg layers specifically settling above ground. Magic items for translating would make communication a little easier, considering most can't hear the pitch of the Flyers' language, and the Flyers' tongues can't form Goblin or Kobold words. They would likely want to stay together once they understood their situation. They could build their own settlement or just join an existing settlement. Likely either Suswood for the similar technology, both being decidedly Stone Age. Or they might gravitate towards the magic of Toner Brock. Either way, Flying messengers going between the goblin cities all over the mountain would be a lot faster than walking. So they have a guaranteed job market. Next we come to the Lycanon, our intelligent plant fungus hybrid people. I don't see any reason they couldn't just spontaneously arise on their own. Somewhere in the deepest parts of a forest with all the ambient magic floating around chaotically, it's entirely possible and entirely reasonable that they just happened. Some patches of lichen on tree roots or on rocks along the forest floor just woke up one day and started moving, thinking, and taking on vaguely humanoid shapes, forming rudimentary societies, developing tools and a language, that sort of thing, until they saw something roughly their size and about the same shape as them running through the dense brush. Being curious, of course, they had to follow. Eventually they made contact and began to communicate and even to trade. They might know more about the forest than anyone. They live on sunlight, dirt, stone, and decay, so they're not competing for any resources. They're not warlike, but I'm sure they'd defend themselves or their own. Maybe they have some intuition or instinct about apothecary plants and mushrooms. They might be excellent potion makers, healers, or alchemists. Imagine how powerful one of them might become if they were inclined to be a druid. I'd assume they would keep to themselves for the most part, unless someone specifically sought them out. Maybe there's more than one location where they happened. What if there are multiple tribal groups of Lycanon? Some in the forest, some in the swamps. Maybe some of them developed on the cliff faces that receive a lot of sunlight. There might even be some who developed underground, just inside cave entrances, where at least a little sunlight still reaches. Or at least where there's some form of light. There are a lot of possibilities. They'd likely still stay well away from any fires. But otherwise, they could happen anywhere, and anywhere that there's a little sunlight, a little water, a little stone, and a little decay to feed on. The last we have are the Vril. Our purple, drow-enhanced, underground goblin kin. They might be the easiest ones to get there, since they're all escaped slaves from the drow. One group of Vril might have fled across the land without a direction in mind, and like so many other groups of refugees, stumbled upon ancient stone walls and the protection of what others had called a cursed land for so long. Being decidedly subterranean, seeking out a mountain, and hoping for caves would come quite naturally to them. Finding a thriving civilization of small folk. Would be something for them to wonder at, while they found their place within it. Much as the Flyers decided to stay above ground, the Vril might be the first viviparous people giving live birth. to decide to live entirely underground, alongside the kobolds. Silent, strong, and cunning, their excellent hearing would make them amazing intelligence operatives in service to the Imperatrix or the Reginas. Or even serving someone else from above ground, whichever might pay them more. If they're less mercenary in their inclination, they'd make amazing constabulary, policing cities and towns and hearing all that goes on all hours of the day and night, and in every hidden corner where the less scrupulous might whisper their plans. I think the kobold queens and the empress would like that very much. So, there we have it. 3 more small folk races integrated into the existing lore. This influx of population might even be what ends up pushing the numbers over the edge and forcing the Great Gwen and the Imperatrix to start sending soldiers to scout the land beyond the mountain and re-establish shield borders at the ancient walls. This also allows for a lot more diversity in party composition for your players. I mean, well, let's see. These 3, there are 3 flavors of gnome. There's the auto gnome, 2 flavors of halfling, Harengon, fairy, owlin, my frost elf, goblin, barghest, and now 3 kinds of kobolds, as well as grung. They're in there too, so that makes a total of 19 races and sub-races, as well as any mixed heritage someone could come up with. We could add in the Hadazi and the Kender and make it an even 20 if you like, but nobody likes them to begin with. Either way, it's still 6 more than what's published in 5e and 2024 D&D. So, let me know what you think. Give me ideas. How would you introduce and integrate these races into your game worlds? Tell me if you think I made any mistakes. I'd rather be corrected than keep being wrong. So, like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time. Might have you facing from that direction next time. Not sure yet.